Anybody likes to read this one? The Nectar of Holy Name. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji Sanmata Dandavatana.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Shall I read, Prabhuji?
Yeah.
The nectar of holy name. One who is faithful to his spiritual master gets the Bhakti Lata Bija. This Bhakti Lata Bija is received when one is initiated by the bona fide spiritual master. After receiving the spiritual master's mercy, one must repeat his instructions, and this is called Shravana Kirtana, hearing and chanting. CC Madhya 19.152 purport. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you for reading, Mataji. So, before this verse, the 19th chapter of Madhya Lila, 151 verse. Brahmanda Brahmitakai, Bhagyavan Jiva, Guru Krishna Prasade, Bhakti Lata Bija. See, we are practicing Bhakti Yoga means it's their mercy, right? It's their mercy. Unless we cannot, unless we give that mercy, we cannot practice this Bhakti Yoga. It's their mercy. And one has to be, one must be. All superlative degree has to be faithful to the spiritual master to give this Bhakti Lata Bija. This Bhakti Lata Bija is received when one is initiated by the bona fide spiritual master. It's not like that unless now you come in contact with process. That itself is initiation. Not in, of course, official initiation is there, but you are coming into contact with devotees, start bead bags, chanting on Japamala beads. That itself is an initiation. You are beginning. Initiation means the beginning to practice spiritual life. So after receiving the spiritual master's mercy, one must repeat his instructions. What we do in front of I myself, what I did, vows in front of my Guru Maharaj, chant the holy names of the Lord, 16 rounds of Japamala, 16 rounds on Japamala beads, and 4 regulative principles, following the 4 regulative principles. No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling. And following and serving in the mission, in the Srila Prabhupada mission, as a servant of servant. Gopi Bhartur Pada Kamalayor, Dasa, 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 Dasa. So these 3 instructions in front of Guru, we take vows. So So what that the spiritual master is going to give on behalf of Srila Prabhupada, on behalf of Guru Vaishnava, Brahma Madhva Guru Vaishnava, Guru Shishya Parampara, he gives beads and he accepts as disciple. That means he is also staunch follower of Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada also staunch follower of his Guru, like that. So, so we always remember these instructions. These instructions only gives so much strength if we sincerely put into practice, and we can understand the essence of spiritual life once we start applying all these principles in our daily life. Shravana Kirtana, hearing and chanting. Now we are doing reading activity. Reading itself, now I am reading, you are hearing. It is also Shravana Kirtana. Yeah, so with the Srila Prabhupada mercy, we are reading his purports and understandings from this Chaitanya Charitamrita. Let us begin with Mangalacharana prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vranda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, chapter 5, the glories of Lord Nityananda Balarama. We'll read from 20th verse. Translation purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The land there is touchstone, Chintamani, and the forests abound with desired trees. Material I see it as an ordinary place. Purport: by the grace of Lord is Dhamas, and he himself can all be present simultaneously, without losing their original importance. Only when one fully develops in affection and love, or love of God, can one see those Dhamas in their original appearance. Yeah. Read Mataji. You can read Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Yeah.
Srila Narottama Das Thakura, a great Acharya in the perceptional line of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has said for our benefit that one can perfectly see the Dhamas only when one completely gives up the mentality of lording it over material nature. One's spiritual vision develops proportionately to one's giving up the debased mentality of unnecessarily enjoying matter. A diseased person who has become diseased because of a certain bad habit must be ready to follow the advice of the physician, and as a natural sequence, he must attempt to give up the cause of the disease. The patient cannot indulge in the bad habit and at the same time expect to be cured by the physician. Modern materialistic civilization, however, is maintaining a diseased atmosphere. The living being is a spiritual spark, as spiritual as the Lord himself. The only difference is that the Lord is great and the living being is small. Qualitatively, they are one, but quantitatively, they are different. Therefore, since the living being is spiritual in constitution, he can be happy only in the spiritual sky, where there are unlimited spiritual spheres called Vaikunthas. A spiritual being conditioned by a material body must therefore try to get rid of his disease instead of developing the cause of the disease. Foolish persons engrossed in their material assets are unnecessarily proud of being leaders of the people, but they ignore the spiritual value of man. Such illusioned leaders make plans covering any number of years, but they can hardly make humanity happy in a state conditioned by the threefold miseries inflicted by the material nature. One cannot control the laws of nature by any amount of struggling. One must at last be subject to death, nature's ultimate law. Death, birth, old age, and illness are symptoms of the diseased condition of the living being. The highest aim of human life should therefore be to get free from these miseries and go back home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Quickly say this, everybody. Threefold misery is inflicted by material nature. What are threefold miseries? Inflicted by material nature. Inflicted by material nature.
आदिदैविक, आदिभौतिक, आध्यात्मिक.
Correct. Yes, Mataji. Thank you. Samyukta Mataji, please read.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. But with the eyes of love of Godhead, one can see its real identity as the place where Lord Krishna performs his pastimes with the cowherd boys and cowherd girls.
Yeah, I can read this.
Yes, Prabhuji. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending cows, yielding all desires in abodes, built with spiritual gems and surrounded by millions of purpose trees. He is always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of goddess of fortune. Perfect. This is a verse from the Brahma Samhita 5.29. This description of the abode of Krishna gives us definite information of the transcendental place where not only is life eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge, but there are ample vegetables, milk, jewels, and beautiful homes and gardens tended by lovely damsels who are all goddesses of fortune. Krishna Loka is the topmost planet in the spiritual sky, and below it are innumerable spheres, a description of which can be found in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the beginning of Lord Brahma, self-realization, he was shown a transcendental vision of the Vaikuntha spheres by the grace of Narayana. Later, by the grace of Krishna, he was shown a transcendental vision of Krishna Loka. This transcendental vision is like the reception of television from the moon via a mechanical system for receiving modulated waves, but it is achieved by penance and meditation within oneself.
It's a big purport, Mataji. Let us give it to others.
Yeah,
Also.
okay, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Sandhya Mataji, kindly read.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, states that in Vaikuntha Loka, the material modes of nature, represented by the qualities of the goodness, passion, and ignorance, have no influence. In the material world, the highest qualitative manifestation is goodness, which is characterized by truthfulness, mental equilibrium, cleanliness, control of the senses, simplicity, essential knowledge, faith in God, scientific knowledge, and so on. Nevertheless, all these qualities are mixed with passion and imperfection. But the qualities in Vaikuntha are a manifestation of God's internal potency, and therefore they are purely spiritual and transcendental, with no trace of material infection. No material planet, even Satyaloka, is comparable in quality to the spiritual planets, where the five inherent qualities of material world, namely ignorance, misery, egoism, anger, and envy, are completely absent.
Yeah, you can read this another paragraph also.
In the material world, everything is a creation. Anything we can think of within our experience, including even our own bodies and minds, was created. This process of creation began with the life of Brahma, and the creative principle is prevalent all over the material universe because of the quality of passion. But since the quality of passion is conspicuous by its absence in the Vaikuntha planets, nothing there is created. Everything there is eternally existent. And because there is no mode of ignorance, there is also no question of annihilation or destruction. In the material world, one may try to make everything permanent by developing the above mentioned qualities of goodness, but because the goodness in the material world is mixed with passion and ignorance, nothing here can exist permanently, despite all the good plans of the best scientific brains. Therefore, in the material world, we have no experience of eternity, bliss, and fullness of knowledge. But in the spiritual world, because of the complete absence of the qualitative modes, everything is eternal, blissful, and cognizant. Everything can speak, everything can move, everything can hear, and everything can see in fully blessed existence for eternity. The situation being so, naturally space and time in the forms of past, present, and future have no influence there. In the spiritual sky, there is no change because time has no influence. Consequently, the influence of Maya, the total external energy, which induces us to become more and more materialistic and forget our relationship with God, is also absent there.
Thank you, Mataji. Yeah. Raju Prabhu, please read from me.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavata Pranam.
Yeah.
As spiritual sparks of the beams emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord, we are all permanently related with Him and equal to Him in quality. Equal to Him in quality. The material energy is covering of spiritual spark, but in the absence of that material covering, the living beings in Vaikuntha Loka are never forgetful of their identities. They are eternally cognizant of their relationship with God in their constitutional position of the rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. Because they constantly engage in the transcendental service of the Lord, it is natural to conclude that their senses are also transcendental. For one cannot serve the Lord with material senses. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha Loka do not possess material senses with which to lord it over material nature. Persons with poor fund of knowledge conclude that a place of void of material qualities must be some part of formless nothingness. In reality, however, there are qualities in the spiritual world, but they are different from the material qualities because everything there is eternal, unlimited, and pure. The atmosphere there is self-illuminating, and thus there is no need of sun, a moon, fire, electricity, and so on. One who can reach the abode does not come back to the material world with a material body. There is no difference between atheist and the faithful in the Vaikuntha planets because all who settle there are freed from the material qualities, and thus Suras and Asuras become equally obedient, loving servitors of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Akinjan Prabhu, please read.
Hare Krishna. The residents of Vaikuntha have brilliantly black complexion, much more fascinating and attractive than the dull white and black complexions found in the material world. Their bodies, being spiritual, have no equal in the material world. The beauty of the bright cloud, when lightning flashes on it, merely hints at their beauty. Generally, the inhabitants of Vaikuntha dress in yellow clothing. Their bodies are delicate and attractively built, and their eyes are like the petals of the lotus flower. Like Lord Vishnu, the residents of Vaikuntha have 4 hands decorated with conch shell, wheel, club, and lotus flower. Their chests are beautifully broad and fully decorated with the necklace of brilliant diamond-like metal surrounded by costly jewels never to be found in the material world. The residents of the Vaikuntha are always powerful and effulgent. Some of them have complexions like red coral cat's eye and lotus flowers, and each of them has the earrings of costly jewels. On the heads of they wear flowery crowns resembling garlands. In the Vaikuntha, there are airplanes, but make no tumultuous sounds. Material airplanes are not at all safe. They can fall down and crash at any time. For matter is imperfect in every respect. In the spiritual sky, however, the airplanes are also spiritual, and they are spiritually brilliant and bright. These airplanes do not fly business executive, politicians, or planning commissions as passengers, nor do they carry cargo or postal bags. For these, all are unknown there. These planes are for pleasure trips only, and residents of Vaikuntha fly in them with their heavily, beautifully, fairly like concerts. Therefore, the aeroplanes full of residents of Vaikuntha, both male and female, increase the beauty of the spiritual sky. We cannot imagine how beautiful they are, but their beauty may be compared to the clouds in the sky, accompanied by silver branches of electric lighting. The spiritual sky of Vaikuntha is always decorated in this way.
Haribol is description of spiritual world. How beautifully Prabhupada saying here. Lavish Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dana Pranam.
Okay, none of them.
The full opulence of the internal portrait is always resplendent in Vaikuntha Loka, where goddesses of fortune are ever increasingly attached to serving the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. These goddesses of fortune, accompanied by their friends, always create a festive atmosphere of transcendental mirth. Always singing the glories of the Lord, they are not silent even for a moment. There are unlimited Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky. The ratio of these planets to the material planets in the material sky is 3 to 1. Thus, the poor materialistic is busy making political adjustment on a planet that is most insignificant in God's creation. To say nothing of this planet Earth, the whole universe with innumerable planets throughout the galaxies is comparable to a single mustard seed in a bag full of mustard seeds. But the poor materialistic makes plans to live comfortably here and thus waste his valuable human energy in something that is doomed to frustration. Instead of wasting his time with business speculations, he should seek the life of plain living and high spiritual thinking and thus save himself from perpetual materialistic unrest. Even if a materialistic wants to enjoy develop material facilities, he can transfer himself to planets where he can experience material pleasures much more advanced than those available on Earth. The best plan is to prepare oneself to return to the spiritual sky after leaving the body. However, if one is intent on enjoying material facilities, one can transfer himself to other planets in the material sky by utilizing yogic power. The playful spaceships of the astronauts are but childish entertainers and are of no use for this purpose. The Ashtanga Yoga system is a materialistic art of controlling air by transferring it from the stomach to the navel, from navel to the heart, and from the heart to the collarbone, and from there to the eyeballs, from there to the cerebrium, and from there to any desired planet. The velocities of air and light are taken into consideration by the materialist scientist, but he has no information of the velocity of the mind and intelligence. We have some limited experience of the velocity of mind because in a movement we can transfer our mind to places hundreds of thousands of miles away. Intelligence is ever even finer. Finer than intelligence is the soul, which is not matter like mind and intelligence, but is spirit or antimatter. The soul is hundreds of thousands of times finer and more powerful than intelligence. We can thus only imagine the velocity of the soul in this traveling form, in its traveling from one planet to another. Needless to say, the soul travels by its own strength and not with the help of any kind of material vehicle. Hare Krishna.
Beautiful. Yeah, let us continue. I'll read bro some paragraphs. Wonderfully. I mean, this is a big purport actually. We have to read. It is a descriptions of the spiritual world and different points Prabhupada is quoted. Doomed to frustration. We have to save our time for the pleasure of Krishna. The bestial civilization of eating, sleeping, fearing, and sense gratification has misled modern man into forgetting how powerful a soul he has. As we have already described, the soul is a spiritual spark, many times more illuminating, dazzling, and powerful than the sun, moon, or electricity. Human life is spoiled when man does not realize his real identity with his soul. Lord Chaitanya appeared with Lord Nityananda to save man from this type of misleading civilization. Srimad Bhagavatam also describes how yogis can travel to all the planets in the universe. When the vital force is lifted to the cerebellum, there is every chance that this force will burst out from the eyes, nose, ears, etc., as these are places that are known as the seventh orbit of the vital force. But the yogis can block these holes by complete suspension of air. The yogi then concentrates the vital force in the middle position, that is, between the eyebrows. At this position, the yogi can think of the planet to which he wants to go after leaving the body. He can then decide whether he wants to go to the abode of Krishna in the transcendental Vaikunthas, from which he will not be required to descend into the material world or to travel to higher planets in the material universe. A perfect yogi is at liberty to do either. For the perfect yogi who has attained success in the method of leaving his body in perfect consciousness, transferring from one planet to another is as easy as an ordinary man's walking to the grocery store. As already discussed, the material body is just a covering of the spiritual soul. Mind and intelligence are the undercoverings. The gross body of earth, water, air, and so on is the overcoating of the soul. As such, any advanced soul who has realized himself by the yogic process, who knows the relationship between matter and spirit, can leave the gross dress of the soul in perfect order and as he desires. By the grace of God, we have complete freedom. Because the Lord is kind to us, we can live anywhere. We can live anywhere, either in the spiritual sky or in the material sky, upon whichever planet we desire. However, misuse of this freedom causes one to fall down into material world and suffer the threefold miseries of conditioned life. The living of a miserable life in the material world by dint of the soul's choice is nicely illustrated by Milton in Paradise Lost. Similarly, by choice, the soul can regain paradise and return home back to Godhead. Haribol. Haribol. So, it's a big purpose. Can we complete this, Prabhuji's Mataji's?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes,
Yeah.
Prabhuji, we can complete.
Yeah, it's a big purport. Yeah, you can carry Mataji. 1, 2, 3 paragraphs.
At the critical time of death, one can place the vital force between the two eyebrows and decide where he wants to go. If he is reluctant to maintain any connection with the material world, he can in less than a second reach the transcendental abode of Vaikuntha and appear there completely in his spiritual body, which will be suitable for him in the spiritual atmosphere. He has simply to desire to leave the material world, both in finer and in grosser forms, and then move the vital force to the topmost part of the skull and leave the body from the hole in the skull called the Brahma Randhra. This is easy for one perfect in the practice of yoga. Of course, man is endowed with free will, and as such, if he does not want to free himself from the material world, he may enjoy the life of Brahmapada, occupation of the post of Brahma, and visit Siddhaloka, the planets of materially perfect beings who have full capacities to control gravity, space, and time. To visit these higher planets in the material universe, one need not give up his mind and intelligence, finer matter, but need only give up grosser matter, the material body.
Yeah, you can read this.
Yeah. Each and every planet has its particular atmosphere, and if one wants to travel to any particular planet within the material universe, one has to adapt his material body to the climatic condition of that planet. For instance, if one wants to go from India to Europe, where the climatic condition is different, one has to change his dress accordingly. Similarly, a complete change of body is necessary if one wants to go to the transcendental planets of Vaikuntha. However, if one wants to go to the higher material planets, he can keep his finer dress of mind, intelligence, and ego, but has to leave his gross dress, body, made of earth, water, fire, etc. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Samyukta Mataji.
When one goes to a transcendental planet, it is necessary to change both the finger and gross bodies, for one has to reach the spiritual sky completely in spiritual form. This change of dress will take place automatically at the time of death if one so desires. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that one will attain his next material body according to his desires at the time he leaves his body. The desire of the mind carries the soul to a suitable atmosphere as the wind carries aromas from one place to another. Unfortunately, those who are not yogis but gross materialists who throughout their lives indulge in sense gratification are puzzled by the disarrangement of the bodily and mental condition at the time of death. Such gross sensualists, encumbered by the main ideas, desires, and associations of the lives they have led, desire something against their interest, and thus foolishly take on new bodies that perpetuate their material miseries. Systematic training of the mind and intelligence is therefore needed so that at the time of death, one may consciously desire a suitable body, either on this planet or another material planet, or even a transcendental planet. A civilization that does not consider the progressive advancement of the immortal soul merely fosters a bestial life of ignorance.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Sandhya Mataji, may
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. It is foolish to think that every soul that passes away goes to the same place. Either the soul goes to a place he desires at the time of death, or upon leaving his body, he is forced to accept a position according to his acts in his previous life. The difference between the materialist and the yogi is that a materialist cannot determine his next body, whereas a yogi can consciously attain a suitable body for enjoyment in the higher planets. Throughout his life, the gross materialist, who is constantly after sense gratification, spends all day earning his livelihood to maintain his family, and at the night he wastes his energy in the sex enjoyment, or else goes to sleep thinking about all he has done in the daytime. That is the monotonous life of the materialist. Although differently graded as businessmen, lawyers, politicians, professors, judges, coolies, pickpockets, laborers, and so on, materialists all simply engage in eating, sleeping, fearing, and sense gratification, and they spoil their valuable lives, pursuing luxury and neglecting to perfect their lives through spiritual realization. Shall I
Yeah.
read?
you can read. I can read.
Yogis, however, try to perfect their lives, and therefore the Bhagavad Gita enjoins that everyone should become a yogi. Yoga is the system for linking the soul in the service of the Lord. Only under superior guidance can one practice such yoga in his life without changing his social position. As already described, a yogi can go anywhere he desires without mechanical help. For a yogi can place his mind and intelligence within the air circulating inside his body, and by practicing the art of breath control, he can mix that air with the air that blows all over the universe outside his body. With the help of this universal air, a yogi can travel to any planet and get a body suitable for its atmosphere. We can understand this process by comparing it to the electronic transmission of radio messages. With radio transmitters, sound waves produced at a certain station can travel all over the earth in seconds. But sound is produced from the ethereal sky, and as already explained, subtler than the ethereal sky is the mind, and finer than the mind is the intelligence. Spirit is still finer than the intelligence, and by nature it is completely different from matter. Thus, we can just imagine how quickly the spirit soul can travel through the universal atmosphere.
Jai. Thank you. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Raju Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. To come to the to come to the stage of manipulating finer elements like mind, intelligence, and spirit, one needs appropriate training, an appropriate mode of life, and appropriate association. Such training depends upon the sincere prayers, devotional service, achievement of success in mystic perfection, and the successful merging of oneself in the activities of the soul and super soul. A gross materialist, whether he be an empiric philosopher or a scientist or psychologist or whatever, cannot attain such success through blunt efforts and wordy jugglery. Materialists who perform yajnas or great sacrifice are comparatively better than the grosser materialistic who do not know anything beyond laboratories and the test tubes. The advanced materialistics who perform such sacrifice can reach the planet called Vaishwanara, a fairy planet similar to the sun. On this planet, which is situated on the way to Brahmaloka, the topmost planet in the universe. Such an advanced materialistic can free himself from all trace of vice and its effects. When such a materialist is purified, he can rise to the orbit of the pole star Dhuvaloka. Within this orbit, which is called Shishumara Chakra, are situated in the Aditya Lokas. and the Vaikuntha planet within this universe. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. Akinchan, Prabhu.
A purified materialist who have performed many sacrifices, undergone severe penances, and given the major portion of his wealth in charity can reach such planets as Dhruvaloka. And if he becomes still more qualified there, he can penetrate still higher orbits and pass through the navel of the universe to reach the planet Maharloka, where sages like Bhrugavani live. In Maharloka, one can live even to the time of the partial annihilation of the universe. The annihilation begins when Antadeva from the lowest Anantadeva from the lowest position in the universe produces a great blazing fire. The heat of the fire reaches even Maharloka, and then the residents of Maharloka travel to Brahmaloka, which exists for twice the duration of Prardha time. In the Brahmaloka, there is an unlimited number of airplanes that are controlled not by yantra machine, but by mantra, physic action. Because of the existence of the mind and the intelligence on Brahmaloka, its residents have feelings of the happiness and distress, but there is no cause of lamentation from the old age, death, fear, or distress. They feel sympathy, however, for the sufferings living beings who are consumed in the fire of annihilation. The residents of Brahmaloka do not have gross material bodies to change at death, but they transform their subtle bodies into spiritual bodies and thus enters the spiritual sky. The residents of Brahmaloka can attain perfection in three different ways. Virtuous persons who reach Brahmaloka by dint of their pious work, because masters of various planets after the resurrection of Brahma, those who are worshipped Garbhodakshai Vishnu are liberated with Brahma, and those who are pure devotees of the personality of Godhead at once push through the coverings of the universe and enter into the spiritual sky.
Thank you, Prabhu. Ganesh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. The numberless universes exist together in foam-like clusters, and so only some of them are surrounded by the water of casual ocean. When agitated by the glance of Karanodaksha Vishnu, material nature produces the total elements, which are 8 in number and which gradually evolve from finer to gross. A part of ego is the sky, a part of which is air, a part of which is fire, a part of which is water, a part of which is earth. Thus, one universe inflates into an area of 4 billion miles in diameter. A yogi who desires gradual liberation must penetrate all the different coverings of the universe, including the subtle coverings of the 3 qualitative modes of material nature. One who does this never has to return to this material world. According to Sukadeva Goswami, the above description of the material and spiritual skies is neither imaginary nor utopian. The actual facts are recorded in the Vedic Puranas, and Lord Vasudeva disclosed them to Lord Brahma when Brahma satisfies him. One can achieve the perfection of life only when he has a definite idea of Vaikuntha and the Supreme Godhead. One should always think about and describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for this is recommended in both the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavad Purana, which are 2 authorized commentaries from the Vedas. Lord Chaitanya has made all these subject matter easier for the fallen people of this age to accept, and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita has therefore presented them for the easy understanding of all concerned.
Very, very big purport, and Prabhupada in transcendental mood, he has covered and he has touched all the various things: Ashtanga Yoga process, devotional service, spiritual world, many things. I put it in this big purport. Yeah, this is in 22nd verse, right? If you look at a physical book, it's going to be the close to 10 pages, close to 10 pages. Yeah. And this verse is from Brahma Samhita. That's where he wanted to put some thoughts about the spiritual world and the material world and the yogic process. Yes. Chintamani prakara sabmasu kalpa vruksha laksha vriteshu surabher abhi palayantam Lakshmi sahasra sata sambhrama sevyamanam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So he was in transcendental mood and writing complete, full of descriptions of spiritual world and awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji and Mataji, and I'll pronounce again. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananda Koti Vaishnavanda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Book Reading ki jai. Nitai Gaura Hari Premanande Hari Hari Gaur. Thank you so much. Have a happy Krishna conscious day again. Hare Krishna.